And I remember waking up and thinking that I didn't know where I was, that it was super dark. And it was so dark, I couldn't determine the size of the space. And I'm like, it could have been Walmart, it could have been a closet, I don't know. But when it's dark and you can't fathom the space, it just seems big, because it's overwhelming. And so I knew I wasn't standing or sitting or lying. I was just kind of suspended. And that was creepy because that's not normal. And and I was having to work to breathe. And it was like terrible work and painful. Like every time I would take a deep breath and my ribs would move, it was just this excruciating pain in the middle of my chest. And I don't know if I was feeling that from my body on the other side or what, but I couldn't move. And of course that freaks me out, right? And I start to panic. And every time I would start to panic, I would just go back to sleep. I would be back in this deep sleep. And then I would wake up and be in the same place. And this just went on. And I started wondering, after a while, you start wondering if you really lived that life at all. And I remember thinking, well, maybe I made that life up so I'd have something to think about here because there's not much to do. And the idea that this is just where I've always existed is horrible. So maybe I never lived that life, or maybe I lived it and I did something terrible and I disappeared and no one's looking for me, or no one cares where I am because I did something so terrible. And I just couldn't figure it out. And so I went back and forth and then at one point I wake up and something tells me to lean forward. And so when I leaned forward, it wasn't like you lean forward at the waist, like my whole body tipped. And and when I tipped, I started moving that direction. And I'm like, oh, holy cow, I can move. This is amazing. And so I'm thinking, okay, left seems good. And I always tell people, I'm like, if you've ever, like I'm scared of skiing and things like that, because it seems very counterintuitive to me to be standing on something slippery going 80 miles an hour. Like that doesn't seem safe. But now I'm flying in this space and it's like the further forward I lean, the faster it is. I can't see. I could hit a tree at any moment because I have no idea where I am. But there was some light ahead. And I thought, okay, that's the spot. There's no light anywhere else. And so I go to this light. And when I get there, there's, you're too young to remember this, but they used to make these glass blocks. And they would put them up in hotel showers and stuff. And so they distort you can tell there's somebody on the other side, but it's super distorted. Well, that's what it was like looking through. So I put my face up to the glass. I usually hit the mic when I do that. I put my face up to the glass and put my hands on it. And as I peered through, things on the other side became clearer. And there I was in the hospital, laying in the bed. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm alive. I'm just really sick or something, which is great news because I could get well. And my daughter is standing back into my right in front of the ventilator. And I remember she had this red plaid shirt on, and I somehow remembered that it was summer. And I'm thinking, why is she wearing that long sleeve flannel shirt in the summer? And I could see the fibers so clearly that I knew what they felt like. I had this super acute vision. And I could see that I was restrained to the bed, which of course makes me nervous. And so then I start going through everything that's in the room. I'm looking at the IV pumps and what's going, and I'm like, okay, propofol, so I'm sedated. I looked at my vital signs and they all looked, relatively good. Looked at the settings on the ventilator and I couldn't figure out what had happened, but, I was critical but stable. And so I'm like, okay, all right, this maybe I had an accident, I don't know. And I looked at my daughter and I could feel her emotions. And I always tell people, my daughter's a Scorpio. Nobody knows what's going on in that kid. Her entire life, I've had no clue what's going on. But in that moment, I 100% knew her. And it was such an experience because the boys were like open books. But she's just always been very private and she's not super emotional. And you just don't know what's going on in her head until she like spouts out with something hysterical. And so I saw her and I could feel that she was scared. And I had never seen her scared before, really. And so I put my arms out to grab her, to pull her to me, and my hands hit the wall. And I just lost it. I was so mad. And I'm like, try not to use bad words, what kind of messed up business is this? You let me see my kid, you let me see me, and now I can't get through. Like, what? This is just that's just mean. There's no good reason for that. And so I'm kind of losing it on the other side of the wall, and I get sucked back into the void.